Hey, what's up, permaculture people? It's Teddy Matson, Seed of Life, Permaculture Design and Landscaping. Just making an update video about the Belfast homestead garden. Right here behind me is the mushroom log soaking container. It's a horse trough from Tractor Supply store, and it's just got rainwater and water from the creek in the woods that I soak mushroom logs in for 24 hours after I inoculate them. Here's some of the poplar logs with oyster mushrooms and maple logs with lion's mane mushrooms kind of on their pallets behind the compost bins in the shade here. All the wood chips under and surrounding the pallets are inoculated with Stropharia mushroom spawn too. So the idea behind that is that it's kind of a mycelial hub, so that whenever I bring in materials to make compost or just store mulch, they can get inoculated just through contact, hopefully, with Stropharia, so that when I ferry them around to various places, I'm sort of passively inoculating Stropharia everywhere I go, potentially. So here's the compost pile I've got going on right now. It's food scraps from 3 houses, including ours, from 5-gallon buckets I gave people, and they have a 5-gallon bucket of the carbon material, either wood chips or sawdust too, along with wood chips from the Public Works Department and sod from other beds, where I stripped the sod and broad forked and hoed to make those beds. So plan to make lots of piles like this as quickly as possible so they gather heat. And another experimental use of this compost pile, you can see there's tomato cuttings in there just from pruning the suckers, which are basically trying to be another top of the tomato, so it's like a clone of the leader. So I've already successfully transplanted those before in those beds I was talking about before. So you can kind of keep on multiplying your tomatoes and kind of staggering the harvest season. These ones I think are destined to go into pots and go inside in the fall to try to keep tomatoes producing into the colder weather. Then there's a comfrey right there. Kind of sad looking comfrey, came from my in-laws compost bin. Didn't want to accidentally start spreading comfrey, all over the place, so I took it out, and it's sitting there to be a compost additive. Has lots of minerals and nitrogen, and it's supposed to boost the heat production of a compost pile. I'm also going to plant comfrey and other flowers all along the border of this garden on top of a trench I'm going to dig that I'm going to fill with chicken wire as a deterrent for digging pests. And so the bed on top of the wire is going to be full of flowers for chop and drop and pollination and habitat for beneficial insects. And I'm also going to sprinkle mixes of vegetable seeds in there to let them just colonize and go to seed and create kind of self-seeding little pockets of veggies. So here's the fence that I've put up. Just regular welded wire fence. Some of it came from tree cages from a big installation I did when I first started my business, and then half of it is also just a roll that I bought with T-posts, and there's some cedar lumber posts over there to help hold the fence up. But it looks like everything in the garden's doing well. These leeks and onions are doing well. All these plants on the side of the beds are old squash and pumpkin seeds from years past in Asheville. Just kind of had all my extras and put them in there and see what germinates, and apparently most of them did. So a lot of these seeds were just an experiment to see how well old seeds would do. And I planted peas under these tomatoes. You can see in the shade there to sort of like give them a little shelter in the heat of the summer. So hopefully they can grow up those poles in the fall as the tomatoes are declining. Looks like the basil's doing well, the onions are doing well, and the squash are going to grow into the path. That's why having such wide paths is nice, because you can let these plants that sprawl kind of take over and have enough space to have so many different plants in one bed. As you can see here, the carrots along the edges of this bed germinated pretty well. I reseeded this bed and this bed right to my right with beets because they didn't germinate very well. But in this bed I have the mix of kale, and I've harvested one time through here. My method for harvesting kale and big leafy greens is to sort of prune the plant for its health, so prune the bigger and more damaged leaves to eat, to make room for, you know, the new growth. And that way the plant looks good, it looks healthier, and that kind of just tells me when I should harvest. And then we got the cabbage, green cabbage with beans and garbanzo beans in here, and squash along the edge. Looks like everything's doing pretty well. Same thing with the beans. There's an experiment with just planting beans from the store just to see how well those would germinate from the Amish store. And looks like there's pretty good germination, as well as bean seeds from packets that were also old. So a lot of this garden, a lot of the seeds were just overseeded, you know, because I had an excess of seeds and I didn't know how well they'd germinate. So despite being old and from various sources, they seem to have germinated pretty well. This is the other fence right here. So there's two entrances to the garden, one at either side facing the compost, because that's the side I will be entering from most of the time, and exiting, taking biomass in and out. I'll just go out this way. I just got one more thing to show you at the top of the garden. So yeah, I have for now been relying on the rain and supplementing the rain with carrying 5-gallon buckets from the woods, like I said in the last video, from a hole I dug in the creek. Just kind of a workout. I think I've strained my arm from doing that. It's been sore for weeks. So to try to avoid that, I've got this tarp tied to this oak tree, held up with these stakes, funneling rainwater into this barrel, which is uphill from the garden. You put a hose on that and you can gravity feed the garden. Eventually I'll put a real shed here, water and tool shed, so I can store my tools out of the rain. Right now they're just kind of leaning on the compost, getting rained on and weathered. Just not ideal. So just you know, doing what I can with what I got until I can do better. Kind of the slow and small solutions principle of permaculture. So that's what's going on right now. In later videos I'll talk about the new BCS walk behind tractor, what I've been using that for, as well as propagating sweet potato slips. We're growing sweet potatoes in Maine. I'm going to try to do that under a caterpillar tunnel, and lots of other cool stuff. Let me know if there's any questions or comments about permaculture design, landscaping, homesteading, do-it-yourself kind of stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. All right, peace out.